To me, man, we just got to keep it simple, right? You got to keep leadership simple. We fall into too many traps. We focus in on task over people. We lead alone, right? We think all of these we think there's a sense of pride in leading alone and trying to solve problems on your own, and you can't do all of that. You can't lead in the vacuum, and I think another part of why people leave is because their leaders act like they don't need the team. They don't feel like, well, Matt is making all the decisions and I just have to deal with the consequences of Matt's decisions. So part of that approachability mindset and part of like leading more, from a simple standpoint is how do you bring people along for the ride in that conversation?
Welcome back
to another episode of the Innovate On Purpose podcast, hosted by Matt Muller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation.
Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Innovate on Purpose. Today we are going to be really digging deep into retail stores and discuss how we stop the bleeding. Stop the bleeding, you say? Yeah, of course. Stop the bleeding of retail turnover. What do we need to do for our retail leaders to help them stop the turnover, to help course correct our stores? And to do that, we have an amazing guest today, my friend of the last, I think, 2 years. It took me 2 years to get you on the show finally.
I know, man.
You've been dodging me. But finally got him. His name is Steve Worthy. He is the founder and CEO of Worthy Retail Global and also The Campus, which we're going to talk a lot about today. So, Steve, thank you so much for finally coming on the show.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, come on, man. I mean, we have 2 to 3 conversations every week, and then we do Zoom calls, and then after every Zoom call, we're like, yo, that should have been
Yeah, we have hours and hours of video of us talking. So I think we probably have like 4 or 5 podcasts at least.
Exactly.
In the Zoom calls. But glad to officially do this with you. I mean, I know you really well. Well, we could just go right into it. But I mean, want to make sure everyone else knows exactly who you are. So Steve, please just give us a little introduction about who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, no, thanks, man. You said it, right? So, the founder CEO of Worthy Retail Global and The Campus, and both of them are combined. They are a retail leadership, learning platform and community, membership community that we're focused in on helping retail leaders, senior retail leaders, deal with some of the unspoken challenges that leaders face every single day. After 27 plus odd years, within the retail industry, I broke off and started, doing this full time, probably about 3 years ago. I was doing it, of course, before I left, but finally, jumped the shark and started doing, this full time. And I've just been enjoying, the journey, talking to so many different leaders and organizations throughout this journey. So super stoked to talk to you today, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be an awesome conversation, man. I always enjoy talking to you about retail and everything in general, but like just the retail aspect, I think we really connect there because we both are from the stores and we both led there, and we see those opportunities that are actually in the stores that like people not seeing this, like, how do we fix this? But you always have a great story about like your retail experience and how that kind of led you to where you are today. But like, if you were to think about like your greatest retail memory that really just drives your passion today, what is that?
Yeah, so like our good friend, Ron Thurston talked about in Retail Pride, like a lot of people sort of fall into retail, I was pretty much that way where I got my undergrad in accounting and I was working for Arthur Anderson. So I'm old. This is, some people may not remember Arthur Anderson, but I lasted 6 months and couldn't stand it. I went down to Charlotte, North Carolina to visit family, and I ended up finding this coffee shop, Caribou Coffee, and I just sat in there trying to figure out like what was my next move. And lo and behold, just connected with the manager. And they were like, "Hey, you need to talk to my manager on my DM." And I said, "Okay, great." And he came in later that afternoon. I met with him, and he said, "How long are you in town for?" I said, "I'm leaving in like 2 days." He said, "Can you extend the visit? My manager is coming. We're gonna go play golf." I said, "I suck at golf. I just started to learn how to play golf." He said, "Don't worry about it. We suck too." So 18 holes of golf of us both, like all three of us, like being horrible. Unbeknownst to me, was really an 18-hole interview. And after that, he offered me a district manager in training, opportunity. And I didn't know anything about coffee at the time. Like even in college, in undergrad, even in the service, like I was a Mountain Dew guy. I never really drank coffee, so I didn't know anything about the industry. And he started to recant like all of my experience from the Air Force with, being a crew chief and all these other things. And I didn't realize how much sort of leadership experience that I had. That was, that you would just, you just do things. And that's a lesson that I probably could talk about a little bit later. Guess it started my retail career. So that's probably there's a whole bunch of other memories, but that one right there, where someone's seeing something inside of you that you didn't necessarily see yourself. And I'm probably taking on that same mantra and mindset throughout the rest of my leadership career.
That's an awesome story, Steve. Like it shows you like how these synchronicities kind of just happen, where it's like you were just in that Caribou Coffee, you wound up going for golf, not even knowing that you were there for an interview, and it just kind of turns into like you start to see like, oh yeah, I am a leader. Like I have these skills that I could bring, even though I know nothing about coffee. Just it's really awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and because I was dealing with training and developing like pilots, right? So I was crew chief, and I was teaching people how to don and off like their CBO, chemical biological equipment. I was teaching them how to survive. I was teaching all these different aspects of leadership that for me at a young age, I was 18, 19, right? 20 years old, teaching all these different things. And then I didn't realize, what I had. And so until he started to bring some of those things out. And I think that's what a lot of leaders need nowadays. And we'll talk more about that too, is like someone to help bring some of those attributes, those latent, leadership skills that you have, and how do you bring those things out of people?
Yeah. I'm basically like the biggest question I think on everybody's mind right now is going to be, what did you shoot that day on the course?
Oh, dude, I think it was like at like 100. I was over 100. I was over 100. I know I was over 100, man, because I had these knockoff Cobra clubs. So this is 96, man. So I'm old. This is 96. So I had a knockoff set of Cobras because I wasn't going to make that massive investment yet.
Yeah.
And I was playing like Pinnacle balls. So anybody who's played golf knows that Pinnacle are probably like the low tier of golf balls. And I had this ratty bag. And yeah, I mean, I've improved my game and my equipment since that point. But yeah, that's where I was.
I'm just glad this episode's not sponsored by Pinnacle. Thank God.
I know you'll never get them to sponsor this one.
No, I don't think so. So at Caribou Coffee, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced there when you first started?
Yeah, I think we were really trying to find our own identity, right? Because we, who the big dog was at that time and still is, it's Starbucks. And so what we would tend to see, anytime a Starbucks would open, within a mile, of our store, or half a mile or whatever it was, we would tend to see within our stores, we would lose probably about 35% off the top as soon as that store opened. And so what we had to do with our strategy, and what I did for the market, was create more of a commercial business where we went into organizations and companies and we supplied them with coffee and pastries. And so my pastry revenue for our market was better than anybody else's, because it wasn't just every store. It was like within each, it wasn't just every store. It was like we were, growing as a market. So I think part of it was just us trying to find our own voice. Like even when I always tell this story about when Starbucks moved into CDs, and they would sell the CDs like right there at the very begin at the at the POS system. And I remember, we started to do that, and I was like, this is not going to work. Like this is not us. Like this is not us. Like
Yeah, me
we
too, right?
are we are literally, and we'll talk about this too in a second. Like we are literally the third place, right? We are literally the third place. Target is a more commercialized third place. Like we are literally the third place, and we need to freaking lead in on that. So I think that was the biggest issue. And we see this with a lot of companies trying to find their own identity. They pick and choose and grab bits and pieces from other organizations, and instead of like leaning into what makes them, unique.
Yeah, it's just kind of like responding to what you're seeing out in market, where it's just like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Starbucks are selling CDs. We need to do the same thing now. And next, thing you know, we're burning off CDs and selling them in stores. So that's what being more, I guess, purposeful about what we're doing and how we're showing up in market is so important, and to make sure that your brand stays your brand. But I know like one of the other
Yeah.
big things like in retail, just no matter what retail you're in, is turnover, right? I think that's something we all speak about. Like, how do we stop the turnover? Because that's, I think, a key for a lot of us leaders, where it's like we have a hard time doing our jobs because, well, we have a hard time staffing our stores and keeping people there. Like, what's your take on the turnover problem?
Yeah. And everybody says this, right? But I don't think they really have a, core understanding of it's culture, right? It's culture, environment, whatever you want to call it, however you want to phrase it, right? It's the place where people go to work and why they go to work. And I think part of turnover is because organizations don't really have a great understanding of why people work for them, right? They think it's just a paycheck. They think it's just the fact to come in and collect a paycheck. They need hours and things like that. I honestly feel like it's deeper than that. I know that it's deeper than that. Working and dealing with people in stores for the 27 years, going and connecting with people. I mean, I'm dealing with people who would take 2 to 3 buses to work. They weren't doing that for the paycheck. They were doing it because we created a really good culture where they can grow, learn, and develop, and they can be a part of. And I think if we are able to really have a better understanding of why people work for us, surveys and different things like that. We're doing a survey right now, for a study for the campus, and it's the retail leadership 2025.com, and you can go in and fill out the survey, and it really talks about where you are as a leader, what your organization is doing for you as a leader. And some of the preliminary results are leaning towards the fact that company doesn't really know who I am. Right. And so part of that is the turnover is like, if I don't know who you are, if I can't really connect with you on that level, guess what? I'm going to probably go towards the next best thing, even if they're paying me something equivalent. Right. I'm going to go where I feel trusted. I'm going to go where I feel valued. And part of that feeling valued is like you understanding who I am as a person and where I want to go as a leader.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're getting some early results and seeing that already. And just as this survey is, you're talking to retail leaders that feel this way, right? That they feel
100%,
unheard. And
100%, 100%. Yeah. We're not talking to, like retailers. Like these are retail leaders, senior retail leaders, people who are in it right now, whether it's actually in stores, but also at corporate, because corporate leaders are dealing with some with some of the same issues. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But I think, part of the issue is not just so much, culture and helping people have a better understanding about who they are. We talk about it in 3 different ways when we do some training. We think about it. The 3 things that are on leaders' minds is family, finances, and future.
Mhm.
Those 3 right there. If companies can really have a better understanding of how to tap into those things and address them with a team and individuals, family, finances, and their future, then we can think about creating better cultures, and then the idea around retention. Because it's not just about money. Not while money is good, it's not just about that.
So you got to give the 3 Fs.
Yeah.
The 3 F retail right there. I love it. Yeah, it makes total sense. And it's interesting too, like the results of the study too. The results of the study it actually kind of mirrors some of the results that I have had in qualitative studies that I've done with
Mm.
retail employees, frontline employees, where they feel like the same thing, where they feel unheard, unseen, not understood,
Yeah.
and they don't feel supported, which goes back to the point of it's culture, because the culture permeates throughout the brand, throughout the retailer. So from every single level, from leader down to front line, everyone is feeling the same exact way. So
Yeah.
family, finance, and
In future.
future.
In
Yes.
future. These leaders are, you know, with all of those things, I think at the core of what I've been seeing probably throughout my career, and then even more so when I left, is like these leaders are feeling underdeveloped,
Mhm.
underdeveloped. Like they are dealing with challenges that not a lot of other industries have to deal with. Very quick, turnaround times with a lot of sometimes with zero to no information. You know, little to no information. And so how do we help them, become more developed in their leadership skills? And a lot of companies are failing to do that because guess what? They're scared to develop people because they think that they're going to leave, which is absolutely insane and absurd, for companies to think that, and that's the underpinning. No one's going to say that, and that's why I love what I do, man. You and I both know that. I love what I do because I can say whatever I want to say. A lot of these companies are scared to develop their teams because they feel like they're going to leave, which is asinine.
Yeah. So how can retailers stop the bleeding of people leaving and better prepare them for the future?
Yeah. I think those three F's are important, right? And then how do you, sort of manifest those into, programs, cultural shifts, to help these leaders become more developed, be able to have the resources and programs and ideas and behaviors that they need in order for them to move forward, but also for them to define success in those three areas, right? Success for you and for Tim and for Susie, it looks a lot different for the family, future, and finance, right? And so how do we help them define it individually? I think if we were able to do something like that, I think we could solve a lot of the problems.
Yeah. Now, I feel like one of the things that can absolutely solve this problem is the campus too. Uh,
Mm.
I, I guess I've been part of this vision for a little while now. Just you speaking to won't shut up about it for the last 2 years, just talking about the camp. And it's like, all right, fine, I'll buy into it.
I know, right? I know.
But tell us a little bit about the campus. I feel like this kind of helps with maybe all three Fs, but I really feel like it's the future piece. It's building the
Yeah.
leaders for the future and allowing them to see what is possible. So I'd love for you just to kind of give a little overview of what the campus is and what your vision is for it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that. It started with this. Well, I won't say it started with this, but just to give this a little bit of data for those who who want that piece is that 83%. I think it's Forbes and Harvard Business Review. They did a survey some years ago that 83% of companies realize that training and development are important, right? But only 5% have an actual vision and actual programs and an idea that they are implementing. So part of what we always wanted to do is to focus in on that 5%. While most people, most markets were probably focusing on that 83%, we're taking a different approach. We want leaders who and store teams and organizations who already have an understanding that it's important to go and get this development. The campus, actually, the vision came out of when I was an undergrad and I had a professor he was a GE alum. And GE, for those who don't know, they used to have this, it actually just closed down, I want to say, early last year. They had this campus that was north of New York City and called Crotonville. And what they would do is that they would bring in all of their top business leaders and minds, and business unit leaders. And then they would fly in these experts, these futurists, innovators, authors, all these people who were sort of setting the trend in different markets. And they would teach, coach, and train all of these GE leaders. And then these GE leaders would then take that information and they take it back into the marketplace. They take it back to their teams. And as an undergrad, I actually got to visit Crotonville because my professor was once again was an alum. So we got to sit in on that. And so one of the life-changing experiences of my, of my life. And then part of the campus is very similar. It's sort of built off that premise where it's a membership community, and the leaders come and they get the information and resources that they need, very relevant and realistic to where they are as leaders. They take that information, they consume it, and then the idea is that they take it and then they take it back into their own stores. They take it back into their own markets, right? So that is the core of what we do. But the bigger vision is that we are creating, you're part of this, right? We're doing these master classes that are changing what leaders learn, and actually the time frame and actually in which they learn it. And then part of that is to create this consortium of expert leaders, right? So we have people who have amazing thought leadership in very specific areas. Now, what we can do with that is we can have a company that comes in and says, "Hey, I want somebody who can teach on innovation. I want someone who can teach my team on personal branding from an internal standpoint. I need someone to teach my team about financial confidence." Guess what? We have people who have taught master classes to do that. But more importantly, those same instructors can come to your organization and actually teach all three of those for an offsite engagement. So that's the big vision, that we have for the campus. And so super excited about it. Everybody I've had conversations with, they're waiting with bated breath for the master classes and for us to continue with the vision.
Yeah, I think the innovation class is going to be so dope. It's going to be probably the best class you have.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to find. Yeah. I got the outline. I just need to find a better instructor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, lost my job already. No, the campus is such a great vision, and I love how it was all inspired by GE. There are a lot of other industries that do have similar programs like this, where it's like you have one place where everything is kind of centered for learning and development, and everyone comes to that. But in retail, it feels like there's so much more, just kind of like fly by night. Like, hey, we have a CBT training. We try and train you in between customers, but you know what? We really don't have time for this. So it's great to see that we have a resource that retailers can lean on, because to develop these programs is not something that is easy to do. And I think that's kind of like where the issue is.
100%.
In a lot of these organizations, I just don't have time. I might have a leadership and development team, a training and development team, but we don't have the time to think about how might we better train. We just have to keep getting these materials out.
Yeah, 100%. I love the fact that you brought up the idea, the constraint around time, because that's important. That's really one of the core issues is around time within organizations. But dare I say, it's also depth of knowledge, right? Because you have a lot of these programs who are there, and God bless them, they're very smart people, but a lot of them are very surface level. Part of what we see within some of the surveys that's coming out, but also just in my experience and in the experience of all of you as instructors, is that we don't want to go wide and shallow. We want to go narrow and deep, right? And I think that is really the core. I think, I've said this several times. And like, if you can Google it, it's not a master class. I don't want it. I don't want it on the campus. And I know that sounds very kind of like, but I just don't want that in the campus. I want narrow, and I want deep, and I want, people can Google Matt Mueller, right? They can talk about your book. They can, see you speaking on stages, but they can't Google your thought leadership, your experiences. And when you're speaking to people and you're bringing out, the inners of who you are to people, can't Google that stuff, man. Right. And it's those very experiences where I call it the moment of revelation that people have when you're talking to a group of people, and they're like, you can see it on their face, and they're like, oh, okay, what Matt just said, right? You can't get that from an AI program. You can't get that from any AI training, development, or anything like that. Because guess what? Once that AI person or bot says it, you can't go back and ask at a deeper level for that question. So that's why it's so important for what we do, is that helping those leaders with the moment of revelations, they can ask Matt a deeper question about whatever the topic is that you just spoke about.
Yeah. And I also think it comes down to like relevancy as well. It's just like
100%.
We have retail leaders that are giving these retail leaders their training, these master classes. like we have the experience and in-depth knowledge of what it's like to be in those stores. And, if we're talking about in-store retail transformation, you probably want someone that has an in-store retail transformation story. This way you could bring it to life and say, hey, this is what we did and this is what
Yeah.
we learned, right? And now you can use that lesson, and learn from this. So this way you don't make those same mistakes. And this way you can be a lot stronger in those stores. So it makes a lot of sense. And I
Man.
also love that on the campus is that we are focusing on all those 3 F's, right? Where you're not only talking about, well, let's develop you in your particular must know
Yeah.
job capabilities, right? Like where a lot of the trainings that are happening in retail are, well, look, you work behind the deli counter. We're going to teach you. We have a CVT training that's going to teach you how to slice deli meat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't do that. What we're doing is we're growing on their leadership aspect of things. Like, well, let's take care of the family, the finance, and the future, right? Let's teach you about retail store transformation, how you will help create change management processes to help your team change. Let's talk about finances and figure out how do I set up my family for success in the future by investing properly. Like you're not getting that type of training in any type of retail.
No. And you brought up the, financial, planning. And we all know financial planning isn't sexy, right? So shout out to Alex Coinoff, who's going to be, he's going to be making financial planning sexy for us. He's going to be making it attractive for us. But we're literally, talking about like, he's literally going to be talking about like financial confidence, right? As a retail leader, right? You want to grow, you want to expand, you want to do these different things, but a lot of times you can't because you don't have the financial confidence or bandwidth in order to make the proper decisions because you haven't planned, 1 or 2 years out where opportunities could come. I've had, opportunities that come up for people on my team where, I don't know how many times this has happened. Somebody's spouse, they get an amazing job in another state. So guess what? Now I'm losing somebody and that opportunity, it opens. It happens all the time within retail. And so, my thing was always like, who's ready? I never looked at it from a financial confidence standpoint, but maybe I did, subconsciously, but like, well, who's ready for this? Who's actually ready? And then those individuals who would step up to the plate, they had some measure of financial confidence and understood where they were financially, and they could take this bigger opportunity. Right. And so those are the things that, leaders are the retail industry. No one's talking about that. No one's giving this relevant and this depth and uniqueness of information. They're dealing. These are the unspoken challenges. Once again, we have someone else that you just, you connected me with, Elisa. Right. And, her class is going to be just dope. Oh my gosh. She's going to be dealing with like, how do you lead in retail, not just store design, but also from a neurodivergent standpoint.
Yeah.
Who's talking about that? Who's talking about that? I mean, it's just blowing my mind. My coach messes with me all the time. He says, because he was on our call, the first call, and then I'm having these conversations with my coach. He's like, jokingly, he's like, dude, I don't know how you get these people to follow you. It's like, I'm very fortunate. It's a joke. That's like our internal joke. He busts my chops. I bust his chops. He's like, I don't know how you get these. I don't know how you got them to follow you with this thing, man. I don't know. So I take that in the context that he approves, And so yeah. So I'm super stoked if you can't tell already.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, as I am as well. But like one thing we didn't even talk about, like as far as like the campus, you dove right to the master class because I know you're so excited about it, as I am as well. But like one of the things that I love the most is the community aspect, where we don't think about like, as retail leaders, who do we talk to about, the problems that we're having? Like usually it's the same people that are in our stores. It usually isn't our boss because we're afraid of judgment, feedback.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I know like when I was in the retail stores, a lot of my problems that I was facing, like I was just stuck with it on my own. Like I didn't have those conversations to be, hey, I have this issue with this employee, or I've had to work a 32-hour shift last week because 3 of my closers called out sick. What do I do about these things? Like how do I tell my employer that I can't work 32 hours and the department has to shut down? I could have used some advice and guidance, with that aspect of things, and I think that's really one of the cool things about the campus is that community.
Yeah.
What's like your thoughts as far as the community and like?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate it. I mentioned it earlier, right? And about the third place, right? And I know that it's, Starbucks, made it famous, things like that. But the third place concept and idea has been around for centuries, right? We see it in scripture. We see it in old texts. We see it with Socrates. He's holding court with people and he's educating people. That's not work. That's not home. Like, it's the third place where people are coming and growing and they're getting knowledge. And the one thing that I've always appreciated about that idea around the third place for us is that it's strategic. It's not just social, right? Yes, there's social engagement and connection within the community, but it is very strategic. Like, the people that are in there, their mindset is like, how do I become more strategic about who I am and where it is that I need to go. It's about relevance. You talked about that earlier too, right? It has to be relevant. Everything that we bring in there, it has to be relevant. It has to be something that, someone has thought about. We have these things called break the glass moments inside the community. And those are those moments like, holy crap, I just bombed my interview. Now what do I do? Like, holy crap, I have a board meeting coming up and this is going to be my first board meeting. How do I actually go about doing that? What are those, what are some of these challenges that just kind of come up, on a day-to-day basis? And you just need somewhere like to break the glass and get that information. So we have things like that. The other cool part too is that we have our own podcast inside of it. It's called the Campus Voice, and it's a reverse podcast. And you were on it, which was awesome, and have some other amazing leaders where they ask me 3 questions. And, typically the podcast is like what you're doing, you're asking me, but it's a reverse one. They ask me 3 questions and I give them, some perspective on where they are. And then they don't just learn, the community learns, right? The community I've had people that they message me and say, man, I just like binged all of your Campus Voices in like one day. It's like almost like a Netflix episode or, series or whatever. And the cool part is that, it's not your normal community where, everybody's posting and everybody's commenting and things like that. It's not so much that. It's more like, I need information from a strategic standpoint, and this is the place that I need to go to get it. Can you ask questions? Can you do some 100%? But the leaders are there. They're very strategic and they're looking for relevant information, but they're also looking at how to execute upon that stuff.
Yeah, I really think I love the Break the Glass series. It's just it's an awesome concept, and absolutely those are things that I wish I would have had when I was in the stores, for sure.
Yeah, no, and that's but you just nailed it, right? I mean, it doesn't matter the level, right? We have senior vice presidents, we have the store managers. We even, and I joke around with this, but it's so true. Like, we even have like a scientist like in our community, right? You know what I mean? And I think that speaks to the clarity of what we are trying to present as from a leadership standpoint. And I say this all the time, is that retail leadership for me, and I may be biased, but I don't care, is that I feel like it's the purest form of leadership. Everybody, doesn't matter what industry that you have been in, you've been formed, or you have engaged in some form of retail leadership, whether you're a consumer or whether you worked in it before. And I feel that the sheer measure of decision-making that takes place, the galvanizing of a team around a vision where you don't have a lot of the information and you still have to move that team forward, financial bandwidth, data literacy, business acumen, customer engagement, de-escalation, right? All those different scenarios. That's 1 hour. That's not a week. That's not a month. That's you've done all of that in 1 hour, maybe in half an hour. So for me, I feel like retail is the purest form of leadership. And if you can get those principles right as a leader, you can they are transferable to any industry. And so I think that's the other appeal that I appreciate about what we're doing with the campus.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a crash course in leadership for sure. Just everything so fast.
Yeah, we got time, man. We got time.
So I want to finish up on one last thing. I'm going back to turnover, right? Like, because
yeah.
How do we stop the bleeding here on the turnover? We talked about the 3 F's. I think that's really important. And then also like just like what other pieces of advice, like what's like a tactical thing a retail leader can do to help stop the bleeding immediately?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. When I took over a market I've taken over markets where I was always turning things around. And part of that turnaround process was to sort of stabilize, right? It's almost like, you're talking about the bleeding, right? To be like a tourniquet, right? What are the first things you do? You have to stabilize. You have to stabilize the person. You have to stabilize the wound, or whatever it is. And you have to figure out like what's the best way to actually stabilize. And part of that is taking an assessment of who I currently have, right? And honestly, who could potentially leave, who's going to be the ones that are going to stay. And then I focus in on the ones who can potentially leave, right? Because a lot of them are probably high value individuals. And how do I create and recreate the relationship that I actually have with those individuals? And part of that is, I moved into this perspective around approachability. Like, how do I make myself more approachable as a leader? Because at the end of the day, if I'm more approachable and I'm have a higher sense of self-awareness and I understand where I stand with each and every leader, I can inspire, trust and lead by example, and I can, display some empathy. Guess what? They're going to have a stronger connection to me, right? And more authentic connection to me. So I really focus in on how do I ramp up my measure or my level of approachability with the leaders that I currently have, because it's not about the organization. If I could just let people know this right now, like your market is about your market and your team is about your team. A lot of times they're looking at you people are focusing like the organization. They're working for you. I've had people that, to this day, whenever I move the company, they move the company, right? And so part of, I think, stopping the bleeding is how do you, sort of triage, figure out who's going to stay, those individuals who are probably flight risk, and how do you maybe double down on your relationship levels with them? Some of them are going to still leave, but how do you actually, connect with them in order to try to, maintain or even retain, that relationship?
That's awesome advice. It is like being more mindful, right? About being in that present moment to say, okay, what's really happening with our team right now? Why are people leaving? And stop rushing to that solution, but really just having those authentic conversations and becoming more approachable. That alone will help, I think, start to solve some of that. It reminds me of that saying where it's like people don't leave companies, they leave
Yeah.
bosses, right?
Yeah.
That right there. If you're more approachable as a boss, people are going to be more likely and want to work for you. And that immediately can help stop the bleeding. So I think that's amazing
Immediately.
advice.
Yeah, immediately, man. We think it's, listen to me, man. We just got to keep it simple, right?
Mhm.
You got to keep leadership simple. We fall into too many traps. We focus in on, task over people. We lead alone, right? We think all of these, we think, there's a sense of pride in leading alone and trying to solve problems on your own. And you can't do all of that. You can't lead in the vacuum, and I think another part of why people leave is because their leaders act like they don't need the team.
Mhm.
They don't feel like, well, Matt is making all the decisions and I just have to deal with the consequences of Matt's decisions. So part of that approachability mindset and part of like leading more, from a simple standpoint is how do you bring people along for the ride in that conversation? And then by doing that, you build equity, right? And you build credibility, with those leaders, right? I can't tell you how many times I was able to cash in on the level of credibility that I created with my team when I screwed something up, right? I
That's
had
awesome.
the credibility and I had that equity, man. It's almost like a bank account, right? I had
Yeah.
like a lot of equity in those relationships. So when I messed up a decision, yeah, then some of the equity, get reduced 100%. But then I built up enough where they were staying. And so I think that's where we have to make sure that we're focusing on that.
Yeah. You don't want to overdraft.
Overdraft, man. But that's the problem. Some leaders are working in the negative, and they still, and they're still trying to. What my mom said, you try to cash a check that you try to, what do you say? What my mom used to say, you try to cash a check that you're. I can't remember my mom saying. Oh my gosh, there was
No,
something like, what I'm talking about, right? You try to
no.
something to check that your butt can't cash or something like that. I can't remember it. that's such an old school saying. Stop trying to, write a check. Yeah, you're trying to write a check that your buttocks can't cash.
And she
I'll
said it
use that.
exactly that way, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll use a different word.
Keeping it clean. Keeping it
Yeah,
clean
keep it
too.
clean. Keep it clean. Don't get you canceled.
Oh, Steve, this has been awesome having you on, man. I think I have some really just great nuggets here for every retail leader. If we take nothing else away from it, it's being a little bit more aware of those conversations you're having in stores with those with
100%.
your retail employees, and just being that approachable leader. I know we're like at overtime here, but it always is with you.
Yeah, I know.
Talk about something else you have coming up. A book you've been talking about. I know that's something that you've been discussing for a while. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on with this, because I think it goes into that approachable leader piece.
Yeah. So, so there was about 2 years ago, I had started this journey of like writing this book. This book is still going to come out. It's called the Approachable Retail Leader. But as I started to do more with the campus and really sort of think about sort of the pillars of the campus, I've moved into, this idea and this perspective, and dealing with a whole bunch of leaders is like that the leaders are doing too much. So it's a working title. So it's either you're doing too much or simplify the lead. I'm leaning more to simplify the lead. And what it is the core of it is just that. How do I help leaders simplify their leadership, because they're doing too much. They're all over the place, conceptually, mentally, physically. They're all over the place, and these leaders tend to fall into different traps. So the book talks about initially around these different traps, and I actually sort of mentioned like a couple of them is the task over people. They have rigid ideologies that they're focused on. And they're also disconnecting, meaning that they're actually leading alone. So part of the book is helping to identify those traps that we fall into, but we tend to take a lot of pride in those traps, because we feel that we're defined, our leadership is defined by how deep we can go in executing on these traps. And the more we stay in these traps, the tougher it is to get out of it. And so then the flip side of this is, how do we provide a solution? How do we help leaders make it more simple? And so there's a couple of things. I'm not going to give a whole bunch away. Some pillars that we focus in on, and one of them is around how do you create like a valued opinion of yourself, your team, and your business. And that in and of itself will help you become a better leader. Will help you simplify perspectives on people, your team. How do you see yourself, the decisions that you make, the relationships that you build. And then, of course, we talk about approachability, and I use the SMILE framework in there, because once again, if you want to simplify your leadership, if you want to, gain margin, if you want to become more retainable, for yourself, and you want to, increase your capacity, right? You got to be more approachable. We talk about criticism. How do you deal with criticism as a leader? A lot of the criticism that you're dealing with is manufactured. You created the criticism in and of yourself because of how you lead, or some of the failings that you've previously had as a leader. And so all of those things, come up in your mind, and you start to manufacture some of the criticism. And then there's valid criticism and there's invalid criticism. But if you're a leader, if you can learn how to deal and identify which one it is and move yourself forward, and you're gonna be amazing. And I don't know. The last one I'll give away is around how do you define the problem? Like, as a leader, there's an ongoing joke with my daughter, and she asked me about like when I went to grad school. So what's one of the things you learned about that you learned in grad school? And I said, listen to me. I said critical thinking and problem solving, right? And defining a problem statement. She was like, you spent all that money for that? I was like, yes, I did. And because I use it every day. So I think, and then you and I, right? We went through the 5 whys.
Yes.
I took you through that.
I hated you for that.
Right. And I think that's the thing. We here's the problem. And I know I've been going long on this one, man, because I'm excited about the book. But here's the issue: is that we get recognition for coming up with solutions as a society, especially in the retail world. If you are coming up with a solution to something, that gets recognized, right? But if you're the one that's defining or even identifying the problem, guess what? You don't get that many accolades for doing that, right? But when you're doing that, it actually will help you solidify the solution that you're going after or that you need. Part of it is that I call it in this chapter, I call it the messy why, right? Because no one wants to deal with the why because of how it makes you look, right? Once again, goes back to your previous decisions that you made or didn't make, relationships that you had or didn't have, conversations that you should have had. All of those things make up, who you are, the decisions that you make, but you have to confront those when you have to deal with the why. Simon Sinek spoiled us, right? Start with why. Problem is nobody does. Everybody says it, but nobody really does. They want to go right to the solution. So as a leader, and help you simplify your who you are. And if you're constantly thinking about, like, what's the core problem here that I'm trying to solve? What's the core problem that I'm trying to solve? How do I get to the core? What are they saying? But more importantly, what are they not saying? So then that way, if I can identify that, I can actually move this situation and the solution along a lot quicker, right? And more efficiently, where it's not just about you, it's about the other person too. So, okay, man. So you got me started.
Yeah,
And,
I know. This will be the second episode now. We'll have to
I know,
cut this out.
I know, man. I know.
But I wanted you to talk about it because I know there was so much great content in there, and just I'm super excited about the book coming out too, because it has a lot of synergies with my book of being mindful and being more aware and simplistic. It's all the same kind of message, and it just it's so important and something that we still don't do. And I like that you mentioned too, like that it comes down to where it's like we don't want to deal with the messy why because, well, then we have to face the mistakes that we may have made or the ugly truths that we might be hiding or trying to hide. So that's huge. And then also the aspect of the framework where you go into not even just the solution part of it, but what are the traps that we're falling into? Because I have so many friends and folks in the retail world that it's just back-to-back meetings today. And they take pride in that. They're back-to-back in their meetings.
Yes.
Like, why are you prideful about that? It's just like, no.
I got freaking goosebumps, and whatever hair I have in my head is standing up when you said that. Like, I got back-to-back meetings, and I'm so busy. It's like, stop.
Good for you. I guess.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't have to be.
No.
I had a client was talking to me, about that, and I was like, and I literally said the same thing. I said, I'm so busy. I said, you don't have to be, right? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, you don't have to be, and they're like, what do you mean? And so I walked them through some stuff, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. I said, yeah, we take pride in being busy, and don't act like we have time for people. And that's just especially retail. It's a connection business at its core, and you need to be able to take time, to do that, man. So man, that's some good stuff.
Absolutely, man. Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Show notes will have all the links. Take the survey, join the campus, connect with Steve, and let's continue the conversation because we can go so much deeper. And I'd love to have you back on the show again for our, third episode. So this will be two.
I know. Well, here's the thing. I'll leave you with, I think I got this for you. I don't know if I have this for you. I think I got this for you. No, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one.
We'll edit
That's
that
the
out.
wrong one. That's the wrong one. We got to edit that out. Okay, here we go. Well, I got this for you, man.
Success is something you attract.
That's still not the right one.
Okay, but it's good. I think
that's how we do. That's how we do.
Well, do it on your own. You just have to mimic it now. So
I got too many. Huh?
No, you have to just mimic it now. What was the button that you were looking for?
I'm not, it's, here we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on this show, Matt. And, I just want to give you a little kudos. This is for you and all that you've done.
Nice.
There you go.
I love it. I just need a Wu-Tang song to follow that up, and we're good.
Well, I think I got one too, but I don't know. I can't. Yeah.
Which button that one?
We don't want to get you. Like I said, we don't want to get you canceled.
Good call. You got my back. Well,
Yeah, I
Steve, thank
got
you
you
so
all
much
the
for being
time.
on the show, brother.
Yeah,
And like I said, connect with Steve on all of his socials and keep the conversation going. But thank you so
excited,
much.
man. Thanks. Thank you, man.
We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Muller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.